morning. I'm Kent Brown, host of the Ultimate Bass Radio Show on Sports 1140 KHTK, and happy to be doing an episode of True Bass on my home lake, everyone's favorite lake, kinda, Folsom. Yeah, we're at Folsom Lake mid-February, and we are still in the middle of that crazy 5-mile-an-hour speed limit. So you're not going to see any shots of this great new TR20X HP running 75 miles an hour. We're going to be idling all day long. But, you know, there's no wakeboarders, no skiers out here. We're just going to go fishing. We're going to try to catch some fish deep on a jig today. We're going to talk about deep jig fishing, dragging a football head. We might stick our nose up shallow with a spinnerbait or a jerkbait because we had a big rainstorm last night. We're kind of caught between storms. Still got my rain gear on. It might still get wet today, but nobody wants to go fishing when it's raining. We'll see if we can catch some today. Stick around. Joining me in the boat this morning, our old buddy from Galaxy Marine, Phil Clark. And you guys all know Phil. You get a chance to talk to him. He helps you with all your parts and new boat rigging and all that fun stuff at Galaxy. But Phil's a great fisherman. I need all the help I can get right now on Folsom. So Phil's going to join me on the water today, and put your life jacket on. Let's go fishing. Hey, last night we had a big rainstorm. You know, we've had about 2 weeks of mid 60-degree weather, and you know, all the fishermen, they're thinking it's springtime. They're out here ready to go fishing. I don't think the fish have quite found out it's springtime yet. It's our biggest problem, and we're kind of waiting to see if we can catch a few fish. We might get a few fish moved up shallow, but I think our best bet's going to really be staying deep, dragging a jig, maybe a drop shot a little bit, and shaking a dart head. Phil, there's no reason to waste a lot of time out here. I'm going to roll right to a spot that I know you and Ryan don't fish.
So Ken, I'm not sure where we're at out here.
Well, this is just a little rise, a little island top out here, kind of in the middle of the lake. It's a spot I don't see a lot of guys fishing. I wasn't even going to show you this because I know you and Ryan don't fish this spot, but you know, I've thrown a Lowrance marker float out. Okay. And it's on top of the island over there. Actually, the floats hasn't gone all the way down, but I'm still a big believer in fishing with floats. All right. I think it helps you line up, and I think a lot of anglers, you know, now we have GPSs and great units, but I think a lot of anglers really miss out by not fishing with a float. But this is a pretty cool island top.
Most of my fish and bites have been coming on a little 3/8 ounce jig. Just a little jig head with the hula grub that I've been dragging around real slow. And that's what I'm throwing now. What do you got tied on?
Same deal, you know, but I've stepped up a little bit. When I start fishing deep, I don't know, hands of stone or something. I don't like fishing 3/8. I like to step it up and throw a little bigger jig, 3/4 and 1 ounce. I think I stay in contact with the bottom a little better, but it's hard for some anglers to do. Throw it on a standard casting rod, a Dobbins 734 with 12-pound test, Berkeley fluorocarbon. And one of the keys I think to fishing deep is not to try to fish too heavy a line. Yeah. There's not a lot of technique to this, you know. I mean, it's drag. Get it to the bottom, keep it on the bottom. And what we're trying to imitate is a crawdad. You know, you're trying to make that jig look like a crawdad that's swimming around down there through the rocks. And you know, this lake being part of the American River system is just loaded with crawdads, and one of the main forage foods for a bass. And these jigs we're throwing, they really imitate a small crawdad real well.
Hey Ken, I'm going to switch over from this color that you turned me on to last year.
You stole those out of my boat when it was there for service.
I sure did, and I told you all about it, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
I'm going to change over from that, which I thought might get their attention, this dingy water, to something that is going to hide them from it a little bit. Now, this is a color that I'm not going to tell the name of, but I've been throwing it at Oroville and Folsom for the last couple years now, and it's really proven to be a good one.
So we're going to move up around the peninsula campground area, and a little breakout in front there I want to fish. You know, that big rainstorm we had last night might have a little run of water in the back of that pocket, and just before we moved, I tied on a jerkbait. I've got a spinnerbait tied on a rod locker. Might stick our nose up shallow, see if we can catch one.
All right, let's do it.
You know, Phil, I'm going to stop on this farthest outside point leading back into that river channel, or creek channel, and this is a little shallow hump. It's only got probably, I don't know, 10 or 15 feet on top of it. This should be one of the first places those fish will stage and move up before they move back into that creek. And, made a little bit of a bait change, tied on a little Stacy 90, little table rock shad Stacy 90 Lucky Craft, and just jerking it real slow out here around the tops of these island tops, and maybe we can catch a spotted bass that kind of stuck their head up here. This would probably be a good spot for a swim bait.
I tell you what, Kent, you're right. Leading up into that spawning area, this is going to be the first spot they stop on their way in there.
They should just kind of bounce from point to point as they move back in there, over the next 30 to 45 days. And it's just a great area. Those fish will start to move. Hey, there you go.
Here's one, Kent. See if we can get him with the boat here.
You need help with that monster? You can be able to handle him?
I don't know. We'll see what happens here. And this is the ugliest fish I think I've ever caught.
It's a pretty nice fish, actually. Looks like a smallmouth.
That's a smallie, but looks like he's got some type of birthmark on him. We'll see if we can get a hold of him here.
Look at that.
I don't think I've ever seen a fish that had a birthmark that big on him.
Look at that. That's wild.
That is wild.
That's a smallmouth.
That is a
Feel how cold he is.
That is a pure smallie right there. And in this lake we catch a lot of hybrids, but that's something else. I've never seen a fish with that kind of birthmark on it.
Wow, that's wild.
You think that's from birth, or you think that's from
It's
something
probably
else?
just a pigmentation in his skin. He's pretty healthy.
Yeah, he is.
He ate a jig real good.
That's cool. I know when I first started getting into bass fishing, I don't know, probably 10, 15 years ago now, didn't have any confidence, and I was beating the bank just like a lot of the other new guys that are getting into the sport. And once I got a decent set of electronics and started looking at those and getting
It
confidence,
opens your eyes.
Oh, it sure does.
Hey, so often our lakes in Northern California get drawn down throughout the summer and all fall, and then in the springtime we get a little snow melt, we get a little rain. Hopefully the lakes come back up. A lot of anglers don't go fishing when the water's low, and you're really missing the boat. This rock pile we're sitting on, pretty soon this rock pile is going to have 10, 15, 20, 30 feet of water, and that's where the fish are going to live. It's a great opportunity to see the structure. You normally get a chance to go out and fish. Either mark it on your Lowrance GPS, mark your map, take some pictures with your digital camera, but it just helps you learn the lake a lot better. Get out to the lake, wander around, put your hiking boots on, and start walking around and seeing some of the structure that you normally get to fish, and it'll help you put a few more fish in the boat. We're going to move back in this pocket. We talked about fishing this outside point. We'd be remiss if we didn't, check the secondary points, the points that are a little farther back in. We'll fish those, and we might have a little running water. We're going to move all the way to the back of this pocket as well, just to see if there might be a fish holding in the channel. One of my favorite baits to fish on early spotted bass is a spinnerbait. It's same old spinnerbait you throw on the Delta or sneaking into a golf course, but seems like when you get out here on these flats and just slow roll that spinnerbait. Everyone's used to watching a spinnerbait right under the surface, turns green, fish has it, and that happens, but not very often out here. I mean, most of the time we're catching them, we're just kind of slow rolling that spinnerbait, trying to fish it down to 10 feet of water or so. So I see you've got a swim bait on, and this is a great swim bait point.
I actually do. I've got a little storm wild eye shad, and I haven't caught a lot of fish on this lake with this bait, but what it does imitates the shad that are on the lake.
Right.
And what you can do is you can throw it out there and you can slow roll it just like you're talking about. A lot of guys, what they'll do on this lake is they'll throw it out there, let it sit on the bottom, work it back like a jig.
Move back shallow and just these brush piles, unfortunately, they need probably another 3 or 4 feet of water on them. Next week or two, they'll be perfect. But just jumped up here to see if we can't maybe catch one on a spinnerbait around these brush piles, and I'm going to move back into this pocket. I expected more running water after last night's rains, and it really doesn't appear that we have too much.
I've already outfished Kent. All I need to do is catch one.
It ain't over yet.
There's a handful of guys that know this lake real well, and Kent's one of them, and it's kind of an honor to fish out here with him. Just kind of pick his brain, see what kind of stuff he's fishing right now.
Normally when you've got these steeper banks, you've got some deep water nearby somewhere, and those fish are, this time of year, they'll come up out of that deeper water. That's a good sign though, to maybe get a bite on a jerkbait in the first couple of casts, and we'll work through this pocket and see if we can't maybe talk another one into it.
I'm just dragging this jig along, working it, throwing it up real shallow and slowly working it out deeper. Just trying to keep contact with the bottom. And when you're fishing these steeper banks, you don't have to move it very far. And because what it'll do is you'll pull it out and then it'll come down, settle on the bottom. Hey Ken, I'm not usually up early enough to listen to your show. What time does that start and when is it?
You know, Phil, the Ultimate Bass Radio Show is it's an early morning show, but you know the idea is to get in with the fishermen when they're on their way to the lake, and it's 5 a.m. Saturday mornings on Sports 1140. And the cool part is you know, for those of guys like you who sleep in, the show's archived on westernbass.com and anglerboys.com, so fishermen can go back and either re-listen to it or they miss a show. And you know, it's pretty cool. We have an opportunity to travel with the best bass fishermen in the world on the show. You know, guys like Skeet Reese and Mike Iaconelli and Gary Klein and Kevin Van Dam, and then still cover our regional guys. You know, Skeet's brother Jimmy, Gary Dobbins, Mike Folkestone. All those guys are just a phone call away for us. So it's really cool to have access to the best bass fishermen in the world. Yay, Phil's got one.
Feels like it might be a little better fish.
Awesome. You're getting cool. You gonna need help with it?
I might.
It's like a nice spotted bass.
Yep, spotty.
It's like a nice spotted bass. I gotta get my hand in the cold water. I see how you
flip
are.
me.
Oh, what a beautiful spot.
There he is.
Nice fish. Oh, come here, fish. Get him over here, would you? Nice spotted bass, buddy. Look at where that jig punched him, right in the roof of the mouth. A nice spotted bass. You know, we show everybody this on True Bass all the time, how to tell a spotted bass when you catch them. They got that little rough patch of teeth right there on their tongue. And a lot of anglers catch that fish and think they're a largemouth, but it's a great spotted bass.
Hey Kent, we may be able to be tournament partners after all.
You know, we're working on it.
I catch the fish, and you talk to everybody about them.
Yeah, that'd be a great deal. You know what? I'm going to catch one. I've already lost one. Now all I have to do is catch one. I wasn't so busy landing yours. I'd be able to catch more of them.
You know, these little areas like this, Kent, you can definitely see where those fish are holding when the water's up.
You know, I've got two awesome points right there. I mean, that is just, you just see those rock piles right there in the middle of this creek when the water's full. You just know those are just bass magnets. Those fish just move right up there, sit right on those big rock piles.
Even if you're not out here catching a lot of fish, you can definitely learn a ton about this lake and where those fish are going to sit and hold. Kent, we're in your brand new 20X, and they redesigned this boat for this year. What are some of the changes that they made to it?
Well, you know, the one great thing that they didn't make any changes on the 20X high performance boat is the same bottom, you know, that we've always had in our 20X boat. Oh man, that jig's gonna stay there. You should have felt how solid that was when that jig went in that stump. Wait a minute, it's coming. It's coming.
Oh, he's got a giant, folks.
Oh yeah, he does.
He has got a giant. Oh, you.
Off the bottom. Feel it. I don't feel it shaking its head.
Folks, you got to see this fish here. It is a giant.
No.
Kent has got an absolute giant.
I caught the whole world, Phil, right here.
Kent, you got the bottom of the lake pulling it up like a tarp. You'll get your jig back here. Did you know that was down there?
Mm-mm.
Want me to reach down there and grab that for you?
Ooh.
Got it.
Man, those Dobbins rods are strong, Phil. Did you see that? Pulled up the whole tree. You know, Phil, one of the mistakes a lot of anglers make is after that little stress test we just did on our fishing line, we didn't break our jig off. A lot of anglers just go right back to fishing, and you know, it's real important that now we retie, because we've maxed that line out, we've maxed that knot out, and we're going to stop and retie that jig. You know, this pressure jumping up and down, high pressure, low pressure, barometer rising, barometer dropping. This time of year, those really kind of messes those fish up. They're not real sure what they want to do when that all starts.
There's a fish. That's gonna be a good one. That's on the wild eye.
Yeah, oh, was that on swim bait?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Wild eye. That's a good fish.
He's pulling. Do I have to get my hand wet again?
No, I'll swing him, Ken.
All right.
I wouldn't want you to get.
It's a nice fish. I'm not even going to reel in, so I hope I don't mess you up. You know. Oh, here, let me get out of your way. That's a nice fish.
Nice,
you know, he's not as big as I thought he'd be on that wild eye, though. But
yeah,
man, he choked it, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He ate it pretty good. Well, I guess they weren't lying about this little wild eye shad.
No, it's
a nice little bait down there.
You know, there's a lot of guys that fish that bait at Clear Lake places too. But I mean, obviously, you know, you don't have to catch 10-pounders on a swim bait. He kind of liked that shad minnow swimming by there.
You know, it's a good place to start for those guys that, you know, don't have the big equipment to throw the big baits.
Exactly. You don't want to invest $400 in a swim bait rod.
Exactly.
They'll get to it because it's addicting, like you said.
Basically, what I'm doing is throwing this wild eye shad, and I was just dragging it on the bottom like a jig. Just dragging it on the bottom. Real slow, just like you would fish a jig. And that fish just came up, ate it just like a jig.
Phil, look at those fish. When they're up off the bottom,
they're a little bit more arched up rather than elongated.
Yeah, they're moving.
Bite's going to get a little tougher to slow down a little bit here.
After a storm, it's definitely going to affect them. A little stronger fish now that he figured out he was hooked, Philip.
A little better. You need some help, Ken?
Nah,
you got him?
He's not very big. But another spotted bass. Jig eating spot. Yeah, he missed the jig the first time. I just kept dragging it and he got it again that second time. Little keeper.
Here you are. Can't get off the schneid, buddy.
Yeah, I finally caught one.
Might be onto something on this break here.
Yeah, if we can stay right on this break where those fish are moving up and down.
Looks like that might have been one of those active fish we saw in there.
Yeah, kind of crawled right across, you know, right about, that jig got about to where those fish probably were, and he thunked it. You know, being raised fishing around Bobby Garland, the guy who invented the Gets It, I have a hard time calling it a tube. It's still a Gets It, and we lost Bobby last year, but you know, the one thing about a tube is I like it. It resembles a little crawdad, and I like to take my dart head or jig head that I'm fishing on it, and I'll push that all the way up inside the Gets It. I will just push against that with my fingernail real light. And you notice when I have that rig now, that tube's got a little bit of a bend on it. So what I'll do is I'll just pull that skirt down, pull that bait down, put just a little bit of a tear in it. Now that bait rides perfectly straight. You know, we've moved down out of the river arm out to the main lake area, out off the peninsula, and just a good little break out here that goes from about 30 feet down to, gosh, I don't know, 40 or 50. And just going to come out here and drag a jig out on it. There's a lot of rock piles and boulder piles, a few stumps, and a few things to hold those fish out here. So I'm going to drag around out here for a minute. You know, Phil, one of the mistakes a lot of the guys make when they're fishing deep jigs is their initial cast is too far. You know, they throw that jig 30 yards away from the boat, and then they're trying to feel it. And, you know, the way to fish this bait is really drop it over the side of the boat, give it line till it gets down to the bottom, and start moving it with your electric and just, you know, moving the bait along. You make a super long cast with it, and you just wind up not being able to feel the bait hardly at all. You know, our jig heads come out of the mold, you know, they're silver. When we're trying to imitate a crawdad, I like to cover up that silver a little bit. And, you know, I hate to sit down and paint with a paintbrush or, you know, any kind of paints like that. And any of your local tackle stores carry a powder coat paint. It's the coolest stuff. You can get it in a lot of different colors, you know, from white to brown to black. And normally what I do with this powder paint, you just take a flame, get that lead just a little bit warm. Be careful not to melt it. Get a little bit warm, you dip it into that powder paint, and it just adheres right to that jig head. If you want them a little stronger, the paint a little stronger, you can put them in the oven, bake them at about 350 degrees. But definitely cover up that silver on your jig head. It'll look a lot more like a crawdad when you're out there fishing. We just jumped across the main lake a little bit over by the dam, and there's some really good flat structure areas out here in front of the dam, and they break off pretty deep water, and you usually get out here on top of them and drag a jig around. Even right here in front of the dam, we're only in about 25 feet of water, and it's going to fall off out here. About another 30 yards out, it'll fall off and be in 70 or 80 feet. So it's going to be interesting. When we get that jig out to the break, maybe we can catch one.
That's a fish. A little spotted bass, just dragging that jig along.
Pick the speed up a little bit, to move out over this break. It's been a fun day on Folsom, and with short notice, between rainstorms, high pressure, we caught a couple fish, and hope we showed you a little bit about fishing deep water, fishing offshore structure, dragging a jig. A few key things to fishing deep and fishing offshore. A lot of us have jigs in our tackle boxes, and the one thing about those jigs that we have in our box, normally we fish the Delta or Clear Lake with them, and they've got a great big 5/0 hook in them. They got a big weed guard. They're awesome jigs for flipping, but those really aren't the best jig for fishing out here in deep water. These jigs that we've got here, this is a Bass Patrol jig, a football style head. Remember, when you're trying to fish deep, you can get away from the 1/4 and 3/8 ounce jig heads and go to a little heavier head. Go to 3/4 or 1 ounce even. Keeps you in contact with the bottom and keeps you in contact with the brakes as you go from 15 down to 30 or 40, 50, sometimes even 60 feet of water with a jig. Don't be afraid to fish a little bit deeper. One key thing about these deep water jigs, they've got a light wire hook in them. The light wire allows you to penetrate those fish in deep water a lot better. So that's why you see really two different types of jigs when you go into the stores. There are so many different things that you can put a trailer on your jig. I mean, you can fish like the sabertail. It looks like a crawdad. The kind of cool part there is it looks like a crawdad in a defensive position. We've all walked into a creek or a pond and maybe even a tackle store and seen a bunch of crawdads, and when you grab that crawdad or go to grab that crawdad, they put their claws up at you. Well, that's what this jig does. As you're dragging along the bottom like this sabertail, it looks just like a crawdad in a defensive position. But there's so many different trailers that you can put on your jig, from these types of worms to the bug type baits that you're going to fish like the Beast, and still one of my favorite baits to fish, especially in the winter time and when the water gets cold, is a good piece of pork. And you just slip that pork on there, and that's a great jig trailer as well. A lot of you have a hard time getting that pork off. You pull against it. Just keep in mind, you take that pork down to the barb of the hook and twist it, it'll fall right off. And pork, kind of an overlooked trailer. We don't fish it a lot. Threw everything on today on 12-pound 100% Berkeley fluorocarbon line, a Dobbins 734 jig rod, and it's just a good 7-foot 3-inch medium heavy casting rod, and it's got a fairly light tip, so you can feel that jig, and you're going to lose some jigs fishing like this. If your jig head's not coming back looking like that, where you're kind of beat the paint off of it on the rocks in the bottom, you might be fishing it too fast. You want to get it down there on the bottom and drag it along. And it's been a lot of fun. It was a great opportunity to hang out with Phil Clark, my buddy from Galaxy Marine, the voice of True Bass now, and still want to invite everybody to listen to Ultimate Bass every Saturday morning at Sports 1140 KHTK. And I'm going to make Phil let me come back and do another show when we've got a little better bite. Maybe we'll go to Clear Lake or the Delta or somewhere, but I'm going to put my request in now. He gave me about 6 hours notice to do this show, but a lot of fun, guys, and just happy to have everybody out here watching True Bass. And if you like the looks of this new boat, swing by Galaxy Marine and talk to them about a Triton boat. It's the best boat on the water.